Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to those on the East Coast. Thank you for joining us today. We're very, very privileged to have two wonderful colleagues leading us this morning, and I'll give you very brief introductions to them. So Andy Berlin is the owner and primary consultant for Berlin Consulting, LLC. She's been the chair of the CCAR Ethics Committee for the last 5 years. And her term is coming up in March, and she's been on the committee for the past decade. In that time, she's worked to update the process, especially in the aftermath of the Me Too movement and greater understanding of clergy abuse. And beginning on November 1st, she'll be Jackie Mates-Mushin's sabbatical substitute for 6 months. Karen Fox is the first woman rabbi to serve at Wilshire Boulevard Temple, and she served there for 25 years. She's also one of the few rabbis licensed as a psychotherapist. Karen has begun an encore career, I love that term, teaching pastoral counseling courses to rabbinic students at the Hebrew Union College in Los Angeles. And she also provides counseling and consulting to clergy through her private practice. So they're both going to speak to us about the ethics code and how we might steer clear of violating it. So we're going to begin, I believe, with Karen.
With Andy, but that's
with
okay.
Andy, sorry, with Andy. Okay, sorry about that.
We got it worked out. Okay, so hi. I just put a link to the source sheet. If you click on that, hopefully the source sheet will come up. You can just look at it online. You can download it. You can have it. You can do whatever you want. Well, not whatever you want with it, as we'll find out in a moment. And I want to let you all know that, of course, in our beautiful COVID world, my daughter has a doctor's appointment that she has to take in our house. So at 10:30, I'm going to be interrupted because she has to come in and get some technology from me. And then I actually have to drive her back to school afterwards. So I'm going to be in and out, but I will be here for this part, certainly. So what we're going to do is I'm going to speak just for about 20 minutes about some of the common code violations. And I'll explain more about what that means. Common accidental code violations, I should say. Then Karen's going to teach methods for increased self-awareness for about 20 minutes. And then we want to make sure that we have time for questions for the last 20 minutes of our time together. So what do I mean by most common accidental code violations? I am not going to talk today about the serious and egregious code violations, because quite honestly, if somebody wants to violate the code in those ways, nothing I say today is going to stop people from doing that. So those are like the sexual boundary violations, embezzlement, some of the more big issues. What I'm going to talk about are the ways that well-intentioned, strong, morally compass rabbis who really intend to continue to follow the code end up finding themselves under an adjudication. What I mean by under adjudication is we receive a complaint and it's not dismissed. We actually do take action on it. So what are those accidental ways that we can all be more mindful of in order not to see ourselves in that position? And while I'm talking, one of the things, and I'll just say as an aside, so we all don't panic, one of the things that people say when they first join the ethics committee is that we go through this period of, oh my gosh, I violated the code that way. I could have been reported for this. I could have been reprimanded for that or censured for this. Like, we're not expected to be perfect. Aspirational is that we follow the code to the letter. In reality, that doesn't necessarily happen, and we understand that. So the first two quotations that you're going to see, and because we're such a big group, I'm not going to just ask for volunteers to read, so you're going to have to hear my voice for a little bit. The first two big quotations that you're going to see, really, if we keep these in mind in all of our interactions, and keep in mind, we're never not rabbis. That's one of the most difficult and painful lessons people learn if they accidentally violate the code, is that we're always a rabbi because people always see us that way. So even when we're not in the synagogue or not wearing our kippah, if we keep these two things in mind, it should help us just in principle remain within the four corners of the code. So the first is from actually Marilyn Armour, Dr. Marilyn Armour, she wrote this book when she was Peterson, Being Responsible to Clients. So when she speaks about clients, she says in the beginning of the book, she actually does include the clergy penitent relationship, so clergy congregant. Being responsible to congregants means professionals, means rabbis, agree to monitor their self-interest while operating within the context of the relationship. Endemic to the concept of being a rabbi is self-restraint. When rabbis indulge themselves, their primary relationship is not with the congregants' needs, but rather with themselves and their own best interests. So indulge themselves is not specifically, don't think about sexual boundary violations, really about anything. Anytime we enter a relationship with a congregant where we're trying to meet our own needs, be it, we are processing our own relationship with our families, we're giving sermons, that are all like self-aggrandizing, like anytime we're trying to meet our own needs, we're in danger actually of crossing boundaries. The other one is really from Marie Fortune, who runs a fantastic institute in Minnesota that really addresses clergy sexual boundary violations. She says there is a sacred trust between spiritual leaders and those who've entrusted their spiritual well-being to them. It is a trust that is governed by an appreciation for maintaining appropriate and healthy boundaries that clearly define each party's role. And that gives a much sort of, if you take these two things together, the clergy congregant relationship, crossing boundaries, has an added significance than most other professional relationships with their clients because of that spiritual trust and the spiritual needs that they allow us to address. So we're going to have that stand here. And now we're going to step into, and like I said, we'll take all the questions at the end. We're going to step now into some of these accidental ways. I'm going to skip the reporting piece. Hopefully by now you all know this. If you don't know this, there's plenty of videos on the CCR website of me teaching these three things. Let's go to term definitions. And I use this, these term definitions are the foundation of almost everything I do in my consulting practice. We start by defining anxiety. Anxiety is distress or uneasiness of mind caused by a perception of danger or misfortune, a perception of danger or misfortune. So for example, let's say we're in a building, we see smoke. That's a perception of danger. We look out the window, we see that a few blocks away, somebody's barbecuing. We don't have a lot of anxiety then, because we know the smoke is from the barbecue. Another scenario, we're in an office building, we've broken our leg, we're on crutches, we see smoke, we look around, we smell smoke, and we realize the smoke is coming into the part of the building that we're in. Now we have much higher increased anxiety because the perception of danger and our ability to react to that danger, is here, the perception of the danger is here. And so what's in between is the increase of anxiety. What's interesting about this is oftentimes the people that we see who've accidentally broken the code have perceived danger from congregants. We will say congregants were disrespectful or bullying, and perceived danger really sometimes where there wasn't. I mean, sometimes it's true, we all know that, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes what we learn is that because of our own past and the way we did not have resources when we were younger to deal with certain behavior, we perceive bullying when it's not present. We react to that bullying. And now what we've done is actually the bullying because the other person wasn't doing something to elicit that behavior. So what's behavior? Behavior is our reaction under any given circumstances, right? So the behavior is you go to the window, you check, you see where the smoke is coming from, and then you decide what you need to do next. It's a barbecue, your behavior is you go back to normal business. It's smoke within the building, you're on crutches, your behavior is you start yelling, you get someone to help you and you get yourself out of there. What is a derailer? So for our purposes here, this is a little bit different than, I want to be very clear because I'm very conscious, Karen's not the only licensed therapist on the screen. The derailer here I'm just using for our purposes. A derailer is the behavior. So behavior is a reaction to anxiety. A derailer is behavior that ends up risking violating the code. So we have anxiety. That anxiety, most, I would say 99.9% of the times that somebody accidentally violates the code, it's because they've reacted with anxiety. Behavior is that reaction is something that ends up accidentally violating the code. So what is that? Now we're going to talk about some of these common derailers. So in the first scenario, you know, I touch on this a little bit. A lot of what we see is anger that is unmanaged. And generally what this means, it's an issue of self-awareness. A rabbi maybe isn't aware of how much volatility they carry, how much anger. I've learned, and I was learning when I was working for the ORJ, but before even I served on the ethics committee, I feel like we carry a lot of righteous indignation with us. And sometimes that amount of righteous indignation gets confused about where it needs to come out. The other thing too is we have to hold a lot in. We can't react to so much that's around us. And that anger gets battled and often not dealt with. And a lot of times when we see people accidentally breaking the code, it's because that anger has come out in ways that is inappropriate, partly also because of the power differential. So we all know average congregant forgets another average congregant's name, no big deal. We as congregational rabbis, let's say, or Hillel rabbis, or whatever position, we forget somebody's name, really, really big deal. The same is true with the way we express anger. So because of that power differential, when we rise in anger, it could potentially violate the code. There's a new piece in there that talks about intimidating, aggressive behavior, or bullying. It's very subjective. The language is new this past March, and it will be challenging for those who serve on the ethics committee in a subjective sense to try to understand what all of that means. And I know there's at least one past chair on this committee, and I'm sure he would concur that some of the most intellectually difficult cases are the ones that are in the gray, where it's not, the really egregious cases intellectually, they're not challenging. Like, yeah, you've broken the code, we know what to do. The really intellectually challenging ones are the ones in the gray, which will be these bullying, intimidating behavior. Another common derailer is gossip. Just don't do it. Part of the problem is that blurry line, especially in small congregations that are isolated, between who's a congregant and who's a dear friend. I just don't gossip. Like it's a violation of the code. It gets rabbis and all sorts of really, even if they haven't violated the code, really difficult entanglement within the congregation and can turn it into such incredible messes. For our purposes, it speaks to Section 3, which is a confidentiality issue, but it can create political, there aren't words for me to describe what type of political disasters can exist because someone that we might have thought was a dear friend gets mad about one thing and then shares things that they really shouldn't be sharing. Racism and bias, this would, keep in mind, even if it's not very specific to the code was written to be general intentionally. There are paragraphs in there introducing different sections and introducing the whole code in general that can be used, if something's a clear violation. Patterns of racism and bias could be violations of the code. We all, I strongly believe, if we grow up in this country, we we have racism. I mean, we breathe it in the air around us. If those are ongoing patterns, then, I mean, we would, once, twice, that's one thing. Ongoing patterns is an issue. Intimidation goes into bullying. Family issues, this is the piece where go to health, and it's my doctor online. Sorry, but okay. Sorry, that's what I told you I'd have before. Family issues, we're never not a rabbi. So, abuse within the home, infidelity, issues around that, personal financial misconduct, you don't pay your taxes in an ongoing way, or you're in arrears consistently to other professionals, that's a violation of our code. Plagiarism is another place rabbis accidentally violate the code. If somebody offers you a sermon and says, don't worry, you don't need to credit me, and you use that sermon and don't credit the rabbi, that's plagiarism, because it's the people listening to that sermon that have been lied to. 2 minutes. Then unmet commitments, you don't show up for a wedding, you forget that you have a conversion, ongoing behavior. I mean, not showing up for a wedding is a big deal. It's not a violation of the code if it happens once, but if it's ongoing behavior, it's an issue. Uncollegiality, this code was written at the time, I am proud of a lot of the processes I've been able to change in the last 5 years, especially with what we've learned after Me Too, but I can't change the code, right? We have to remain within the four corners of the code. Please pay very careful attention to section 5. A lot of rabbis accidentally violate section 5 because it was written probably at a time when, is my congregation bigger than yours, right? Senior rabbis of large congregations, turf issues, just really pay attention to that piece. Breaching confidentiality. We can't say, oh yeah, so-and-so has also had this particular issue in the past, why didn't you talk to them? We can say, I know someone who's had that issue in the past, would you like, with your permission, I can give them your name. So that's another place we accidentally violate the code. And then the last place where people have accidentally violated the code is charging for conversion. Okay, so it's and that's Talmudically based, but it's also in our code. We cannot charge for Geirut. This has become somewhat of an issue as rabbis have had, a lot of these independent rabbinates that they've been building. So I spoke very quickly. I'm going to stop there because I want to make sure Karen has her 20 minutes, and especially that we have time for questions.
Thanks so much, Andy. Appreciate it. Karen.
First of all, it's great to be here, and I want to thank you. And secondly, I'm going to be focusing on boundary management, meaning what are the warning signs that we need to be attentive to for boundary management, meaning really, when am I vulnerable? And I think boundary management becomes difficult, especially when you don't feel like yourself. And most of us don't feel like ourselves in many ways these days. And I feel like, how could we, after 20 months of pandemic, after all this techie focus in terms of what it takes to communicate in the rabbinate, in terms of working with health committees who switch and bait and change at the last minute, and including the reality of just completing 2 high holidays that are distanced and techie. So all of that adds to not feeling ourselves. So I want to look at some questions that are the personal questions we might ask ourselves regarding boundary management. And like Andy, I want to refer to, she changed her name recently, Marilyn Peterson, and her book At Personal Risk. If you don't know it, order it. It was written in 1992. It still stands in terms of boundary violations and understanding the power dynamics between people that are clergy and congregants and other professionals. So what are the essentials of boundary management? I think they really start with checking in with yourself regarding the big picture and the small picture. How am I doing in my daily tasks as a rabbi, as a partner, as a parent, as a child, as a sibling, as a friend? What behavioral changes have I noticed about myself? What emotional changes have I noticed? In other words, am I irritable? Am I feeling down every morning? Do I avoid challenging conversations with my spouse, the president of the congregation, my kids? Do I catastrophize new realities? Do I isolate from others? Those are just some questions one might ask oneself in terms of emotional changes. Another key question is, who do I talk to? Do I talk with my spouse? Do I have a friend? Do I have a therapist? Do I have a spiritual director, a colleague, a chavruta, a walking partner, a tennis partner? Who do I talk to so that I have a safe place to talk? And 5, how long have these feelings been going on? You know, is it a week that I wake up feeling with a heaviness on my chest? Is it 2 weeks? Is it a month? Is it 3 months? Is it now 6 months? So noticing the time frame is very important in terms of answering the essentials of boundary management, which is checking in with yourself. I do think there are questions, 2 big questions that are the overarching questions that one might ask as it relates to boundary violations and boundary crossing, just as questions to keep you and others safe. Number 1 might be, am I bending a conventional protocol or a moral line somewhere in the way that I'm relating to people? And if I am, notice it and ask about it and get some help. That might be a boundary crossing, which happens. And that's a bending of conventional protocol, something we want to watch as an indicator. But there's a second question that is a deeper and more worrisome question, but a good indicator. Am I breaking a moral line? Meaning, do I feel guilty about something? Do I hide things? Am I secretive at home, with my congregants, with my discretionary fund, with my time? And that might indicate a boundary violation, which is a harmful, exploitative, repetitive behavior that often a rabbi hides. So notice and get some help. Those are the 2 big questions. And I'd like to take it now down to a little more concrete in terms of personal warning signs. When am I off track? And the first thing I'd like you to think about is really, what are the physical signs? If you really are physically and emotionally exhausted, meaning fatigue all the time, can't sleep at night, not able to focus, go to your doctor. Get a plain old physical and find out, is there something going on? Is it as simple as I've got a urinary tract infection, which causes all sorts of emotional problems? Are there some other things going on that you don't know about? So check out the physical and signs that might indicate concrete things or emotional things. For example, chest pain, heart palpitations might be a panic attack, but it might be something going on with your heart. Fainting, dizziness, imagining illness, which is pretty easy today, and ignoring illness, those are other things to check out with your doctor. Loss of appetite, increased appetite, overeating, or drinking, or using drugs. Those are things to watch out for. So another check-in, anxiety. Am I anxious? And the definitions I use are taken from the APA, from the American Psychological Association 220. So anxiety, we can ask ourselves these same check-in questions. It's an emotion. Most of us know it. We're Jewish. We know what anxiety is. However, am I feeling tension? Am I worried about things? And is that a repetitive worry Does it become an intrusive thought, daytime or nighttime? Are there physical changes going on? I mean, do I have increased blood pressure? What does that mean? Is it brought on by stress? Am I avoiding certain situations and people? Do I have a sense of edginess, irritability? Are my palms wet and sweaty? Am I trembling? Those are other indications of anxiety. And something we might take notice of are anniversary dates, which might have happened in our own lives at different times. The beginning of a divorce, a tragic death, an issue with, being in New York 20 years ago at the World Trade Center. Are there anniversary dates that trigger you that you can put in your calendar and notice to be as kind as you can to yourself during those days? And those are samples of anxiety. Other things we can notice to check in regularly with ourselves are signs of depression. And again, most of us know it if we see it, but can't necessarily define it. But depression is definable. It is also treatable. And it causes feelings of sadness and loss of interest in activities or anger or disengagement, and can lead to a variety of different problems that appear in our work and home. So some symptoms to notice: feeling sad or having a low mood or heavy heart every morning when you get up. Not having interest in the things that you used to like to go. You used to like to ride your bike. You used to like to take a hike. You used to like to walk with your partner and talk, and you're finding you don't want to. Indicator. Notice again changes in appetite, weight gain or weight loss. Notice trouble in sleeping. And I noticed there different apps have sleep records to see that you're actually sleeping. And frankly, people find out that if you go to sleep and wake up at the same time daily, that adds to feelings of comfort and good care. It's a simple thing, but it is a big thing. And I usually recommend to people that there also need to be turn-off times in terms of when you're not responding to your congregant. If it's after 9 and before 9, unless it says death on your phone or text, it's your time off. I think another thing to watch as clergy is, are we engaging in purposeless activity? Are we avoiding the work itself? How many times can we bake a sourdough bread? How many times can we go plant and avoid doing the work we do and land up writing at 11 or 12 at night? Which some people are built that way, but other people, it's an indicator that there's been an inability to sit still, to focus, and there's distractibility in terms of purpose. Another thing to notice is, am I feeling a loss of purpose? Do I feel like, oh my God, this is the 5th time I've wrote this holiday sermon. This is the 20th time I've wrote it. Have I written this sermon before? Aren't they all the same? Well, the truth is they may have a common theme, but if you're writing always the same, it's a good indicator you haven't poured back into a sense of worth so that your jug is full or fuller. I think something to watch for rabbis and people in the public world is cynicism. Often cynicism and that feeling of being a little snarky is a good thing to notice in terms of depression. Sometimes feeling a lack of accomplishment, even though you can say this week, I buried 3 people, I did a sermon, I took my dog on a walk, I even had dinner with my spouse, but I'm not feeling a sense of accomplishment. That's another thing to notice. We might notice as well that we're feeling like we're living outside the community. And on one hand, we are, as rabbis, always of the community, but not quite in it. But that's something to notice. Do I feel like I'm always on the edge? And where is my community who supports me? I think it's very important for rabbis to notice the personal side as well, which is I'm lonely and I'm needing affirmation. How am I getting it? And if I'm feeling that intensely, that's a good indicator of some signs of depression. Am I lonely for love? Am I choosing love from a partner who's not the right demographic for me? Am I angry? Does my anger come out in meetings or with my spouse or with my kids? Am I angry at myself? And anger is usually a good indicator of some signs of depression, because being angry is easier than going deeper and tolerating the sadness. In line with that, impatience is another sign of anger. And sometimes that impatience leads to explosive anger. It might even lead to violence, or simply throwing something at somebody and you would say to yourself, oh my God, I would have never done that before. And that's a good indicator. I'm not noticing that I'm impatient or sad or lonely. Another indicator of depression is difficulty thinking, concentrating, making a decision. Of course, there are also the deeper issues of the thoughts of death and suicide, of feeling there's no way out. And again, that's important to notice in yourself and turn for help. So the question, this is just a list. I will actually email this to Suzanne and you can all have it. These are symptoms that might happen for a week or two. You know, maybe it was just the first 2 weeks of the pandemic and now we're into it. We've handled all the technical stuff and we're challenged by it. But it's likely that people who went into a field that dealt with people-to-people work may not be so just satisfied with it. And that's something to notice. And what do? We ask for help. Find a friend, a doctor, a therapist, a colleague, a chavruta partner, a spouse. It's also helpful to be in some kind of group that's not a group at your synagogue, meaning, do you have a study partner? Do you have a tennis partner? Do you walk with somebody? Do you play cards or whatever it is that people do in group that's not having to do with who you are professionally? So I do think it's important to be a part of a group. I will say I'm beginning another support group for rabbis beginning in late October that will meet twice a month as a group and once as individuals. But I think for a person now, it is very important to ask ourselves the question, what's keeping me up at night now? How can I soothe that angst? How can I listen to it and reflect on it? And I would suggest that you look at somebody else who's around here on the Zoom call at PARR and text them after the meeting and plan to check in 2 weeks and say, how are you doing? So that we can have a sense of support for each other. And that's just a nosh of warning signs as it relates to boundary issues. And I would say, go back to Marilyn Peterson and ask the questions to keep you and others safe. Am I bending a conventional protocol or a moral line in my behavior? Get some help. Am I breaking a moral line? Do I feel guilty? Do I hide things? Am I secretive? That might be an indicator of a boundary violation. Get some help. Get some help. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karen. So these were incredibly, insightful and very, very helpful presentations. We'd like to open it up if people have questions. I'm sure there are lots of questions out there. Who would like to ask? I mean, I have a question. which is there is, I mentioned this to a couple of people before. Louis Cameras wrote an excellent piece that's in E-Jewish Philanthropy. I saw it this morning about how burnt out we all are because of the added stress of technology and the pandemic and all of that. And, you know, his conclusion is that we need to be appreciated by our organizations, whether it's a synagogue or another organization. So I'm just wondering, you know, I don't think, at least in my experience, the experience of many of my colleagues, that boards are so wonderful about recognizing how hard it is to be a rabbi, especially in these days. Any suggestions about how we might address that issue?
I might suggest, first of all, to check in with yourself. Are you actually taking a day off?
No.
Do you close your phone at 9 o'clock or 9:30 at 9 and not pick it up till 8 or 8:30 or 9 in the morning, like people used to do when they went to work? You
Nope.
can check if there is a death, but lots of times we don't take the time that is actually there, in that we have work that is actually pretty flexible. And there are some quiet times where it takes personal courage to close the computer and take a walk around the block, go for a swim, go for a run, do something that's not connected. And I think that's a first thing. I think, two, being candid and asking for some help with your president and, you know, who might be the personnel committee or whatever, and saying, this is really stressful. I actually, this year I'm going to take my vacation, and I may take it in October, 2 weeks after Simchat Torah. And it's also that we become proactive in terms of our own health. Schedule your vacations early and keep them if you can. Health issues get in the way, and I know that there have been, not only COVID, but other people have suffered from illnesses because they haven't gone to the doctor because you're afraid to go into a medical facility. So being on top of your own health is very important. I do think candor with president and your personnel person or the vice president, and saying it's really been a hard time. How can we get help together that benefits the synagogue? Because your health benefits the synagogue. And the phrase I like to say is, what will benefit our congregation? A healthy, alert rabbi benefits the synagogue. And how can we create opportunities for health and well-being? And if it means that your usual study group on Wednesday doesn't meet on the computer, but meets at Temescal Canyon or whatever park is near you, that you take it outside right now sometimes. And we, for the most part, are in the warm part of the world, except for Doug, who's going to get snow pretty soon. But in reality, that sense of what can we do that breaks the pattern, I think we have to initiate it. People who are lawyers, people who are politicians, people who are doctors have some of the same stuff that we're going through. And I think perhaps making a friend with another professional who's in the public world and asking how they get help is also of value. So just a few thoughts.
Thanks, Karen. Rich Agler. Or Agler.
Thank you to both presenters. Karen, my dear classmate, Andy, we haven't met, but thank you for all of your service. So thank you both for what to watch out for. I wanted to note that the violations that seem to get reported to us, as members of the conference, seem to overwhelmingly be in the realm of personal conduct and boundary violations, etc. And there are many obvious thou shalt nots, which I think we kind of know. But the boundaries, as you both noted, have become just so different than they were a generation ago, perhaps. So I guess my question is, under what circumstances can a single rabbi initiate a relationship that has the potential to become an intimate one? And have at it. Thank you.
So 20 years ago, Laura asked me that question. Laura Geller asked me that question at one point. And at that point I said, you live in the city, go date somebody in the valley. But I don't know that I would say the same thing today. And Andy, I would wonder how you would respond.
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult question. I do want to say, just to the statement you made before the question, just and this is for everybody, keep in mind that what you're seeing in terms of adjudications are the adjudications that are egregious enough to be published. What you don't see are the dozens of adjudications that we have that are reprimands or censures that are not published, right? So and those run the gamut, they're all over the place. In terms of being single, it is a very difficult profession to be in while dating. I don't have a line in the sand for you or a concrete answer. It is something that we have been asking for direction about. So the Ethics Process Review Committee would be the right place to do that, to clarify in the code what that is. What I do know is that if we receive a complaint to the Ethics Committee, we will be looking into it to see if there were clear boundary violations. And that's our only role, right? So we only get involved when we receive that complaint. I do have rabbis call me to ask me that question. And I would ask questions like, where do you live? What's available in your community that's outside of the bounds of the congregation? And then even after I ask these questions and give advice, so it's a personal, and you can reach out to either me or Anna Bonheim as the chair-elect. So she's been shouldering a lot of the obligations of the chair. Even after we have this conversation and we give you advice, what we do say is there's no guarantee for any of us that a complaint won't be filed. So we have actually received complaints that have been officially filed by disgruntled exes and have ended up dismissing some of these complaints. But because our process is antiquated and run by volunteers, not professionals, it is incredibly slow. And even if a case is dismissed, it's a horrible experience to have to go through the whole thing when we receive a complaint. So it's really a one-on-one advice that we would be giving you, given your own set of circumstances.
I'm not single, by the way, but I know that this is this is
Don't date. Don't date then. Like that's my advice for you.
I'm good. Yeah.
Stay faithful.
But thank you. And again, I don't know if someone can follow up on this, but it seems to be a really nub of the matter kind of an issue. And if there was a way to get some clearer guidance out there, it's not so simple to say, well, go in the valley. Well, how am I going to meet someone in the valley? What do I go to the sports bar or something, or whatever it might be. I know that that's for who I want to meet. And, typically we meet people in our professional circles and all of a sudden, what's black, what's white, what's gray, what's light gray, what's dark gray. I don't envy, but I think there's, if I may say so, a lack of clarity, that may lead to all sorts of problems. And as you know, I have friends who've gone through the process, and it's, as you, with awareness, know that it's not happening.
You know what, can I interrupt for a second? Because I want to be able to give other people an opportunity also. Stan Davids has his hand up, but thank you, Rich. That was a great point to bring up.
Stan, if you don't mind, just one piece of privilege right before you speak. Sorry. I know we have at least one member of the Board of Trustees and the CCR on the call, and I would just ask that some of these concerns get reported back to the CCR.
Thank you. This has been great. My question would be, in terms of connection with the placement process, are congregants now being instructed to directly ask candidates whether they've had any interactions with the ethics committee? Is that a recommended question during an interview?
You'd have to ask the placement office. I have made that suggestion to the placement office. But so Sarah Mason Barkin says, yes, they asked that in the interview. Yes.
Okay. I'd like to also read something that I think
Actually, Sarah Mason Barkin responded to the question, yes.
Yes, yeah, that's what Andy just said. So Rabbi Lisa says, Rabbi burnout stress. There's also a reality in temple life that has changed in the last few decades. It's not about appreciation from congregants, but it's a combination of more administrative work on rabbis because of technology is now the way we communicate and do our work, and the expectation of congregants, the decrease in temple budgets, volunteers, and membership are real stressors on synagogues. Rabbis are carrying a lot more areas of congregational life than we used to. This isn't just about setting time boundaries. It's about having 2 full-time jobs in our congregations. And maybe you want to respond to that because, yeah, you can ask for help. It doesn't mean you're going to get it. I've certainly asked many times and not gotten it. And, you know, if there's a lack of volunteers, people willing to, you know, help out or able to, if there's a budget problem and you can't hire someone else, it ends up falling on the rabbi. Any suggestions for that?
Is that to me or to Karen?
Either one, either one.
Look, as I put in the note, part of it is how do you get volunteers that are actually feeling that they're volunteering in something they know they can do well and they are appreciated for, because I think the volunteer also needs to feel a sense of appreciation. I do think people are burnt out the same way that the rabbis and other temple staff is burnt out, but sometimes finding volunteers who haven't done the tech stuff before but are interested in it is some way of finding help. And again, the candor with your president and vice president to say, this is an issue that we need to address together. It isn't the rabbi's issue, it is the synagogue issue. How do we help get the technology that we need? And let's look for some volunteers who might be in the field who haven't stepped up before to help us do it for a short time period. I'd say volunteer engagement, short time letters and notes of appreciation and acknowledgement. I think that the reality of less budget is where people are in this time, and that the synagogue is in the hands of the lay people. It's their community. We're invited to be part of it, but the stepping up of lay leadership in this key way, and that is actually a skill that people in the field or in your congregation may have in better ways than you do.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? Okay, Wendy.
Okay, so the nature of my rabbinate is that sometimes people find me through my website. And I recently was contacted by a woman who wants to become Jewish. So do I need to refer her to another colleague? I can't charge her for teaching, or I can't charge her for the ceremony.
Can you reach out to me?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we are allowed to charge for the class, right? If we do an introduction to Judaism class for a group, right? Individual is a different matter, right? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, part of it, this just brings up, you know, what has been so painful in the last 5 years, which is, you know, we are working in the 4 corners of the code. We have to remain within the 4 corners of the code, and the code's antiquated. You know, the code was written antiquated. The code
can't
was
be updated. Can it be updated?
Yeah, I'll explain. The code was written in a very, very, very different time. So the ethics process review committee is updating it, but it's trying to update, you know, it's trying to turn a stone into an airplane, right? Like it's really, really difficult. Thankfully, and this is, you know, since I've become chair, I've been asking for consulting, not specifically consulting. The board, actually, the CCR was able to articulate in that way, but have recognized that just updating the code isn't going to do it. So just for the history, for people to know, Alcala, which is doing the audit, that was something that we had in place well before the Michael Cook or Shelley Zimmerman issues came to the fore. It was just coincidence. It all happened at the same time. And the whole point of that is to really look at the entire ethics process, the code, the Board of Appeals, the Ethics Process Review Committee, and kind of build something from the ground up. And, you know, thankfully, what we have right now is Amy Schwartzman and Nikki Greninger are co-chairs of the ethics. The ethics right here, ethics task force. Nikki put it in the chat, the ethics task force, which is going to take those recommendations and really do something that modernizes our code. Part of why I want Wendy to talk to me privately is our code was written not at a time when we had rabbis being paid to do individual teaching. So it's from the committee's perspective, it's challenging.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for one more question. Is there somebody else who has a question? I don't see any hands. Okay, well, thank you so very much, both Karen and Andy, for all your wisdom. It's really important. I do want to mention before we go on to our board meeting that Evan Goodman is going to be the chair of the nominating committee for next year, for next year's board. And I'm going to mention the names of people who are now on that committee that Evan has put together. So if you're interested in being on the board, then you can reach out to any of these people. Lisa Hochberg Miller, Cheryl Rosenstein, Sam Spector, Jill Perlman, Jan O'Fell, Daniel Brenner, and Ben Fried. Now, when I send out the recording for this session along with, when I send out the recording for this session along with the various documents that have been discussed here, I will put those names in as well. And so that way you'll have them written out for you and you can reach out to those people. So we're going to move on to our board meeting in a couple of minutes, and everyone's welcome to stay if you'd like to. They're really exciting. We're going to hear about next year's convention, next year as in January. And it seems that from the survey I sent out, the majority of people feel comfortable being in person. Everyone has to be vaccinated and masked. Masked is not encouraged, it is required. And there's some appreciation going on in the chat for Karen and Andy. You know, unless there's some mutation that occurs and we find out that we have to, you know, go back into our bunkers, it looks like we are going to be in person in January in Palm Springs. So I'm going to call on Harry Rosenfeld to tell us about next year's convention. Harry?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah.
I made it back.
Outside. Yeah, nice.
I'm outside and having a great time. And I will start by saying that 3 months and a week of retirement has done me a world of good. And I want to thank Larry Goldmark in particular for his regular calls and prompting, and Heidi Cohn for all the back support she's been giving me. So here you have the convention. Hopefully you can all see it. The title I borrowed from Dr. Mahali, and Andy, I will cite that in the next edition before it gets mailed out. Our moorings and our reach is from Dr. Mahali, but also our potential, celebrating our past, moving toward our future. And by the "our" there, I mean us and our congregants. And then we're also going to be honoring Sally Present on the anniversary of her 50th ordination. And this is the 75th PARR convention, and that will be acknowledged too. So if you look at the schedule, it says no host cocktail party mixers. We are working on that to make it COVID safe. I don't know quite what that means, but okay. We're not sure where that's going to be or exactly how that's going to work. But one of the reasons we really are pushing to have this in person is because we're all been missing, the vast majority of us have been missing collegial time and being able to talk in person and share in person. And so the whole convention is designed to facilitate that. At the banquet, Steve Einstein, thank you very much. I saw you were on here. Will be doing Birkat and honoring our past presidents and PARR on the occasion of our 75th anniversary. So if you are a past president of PARR, hopefully you'll be and still with us. Hopefully you will be there, and we can honor and celebrate you. Sally's going to. The title she sent me for her talk, which will be at the banquet, is called Maunderings. I do not know what she means by that. She did not give me a summary, but I'm looking forward to it as well. The libations in chat with the leadership that will hopefully be there and happen. Again, some of it's up to COVID, some of it's up to who from the movement shows. Our speaker is Eva Stern. I'm going to actually say facilitator or in charge of things is Eva Stern. You can read the description here. We're going to start on Monday by taking stock. January works too, not just the high holidays. And here we're really Eva's going to lead us on through some exercises and give us time to talk with each other about the things that we have learned these past, by then, 20 plus months. What has worked during this time? What do we miss during this time? What do our folks, our congregants, or those of us who work in institutions, our constituents, our stakeholders miss? What have they found meaningful? What can we let go of? And what can we let go of? And also what do we really want to keep, both from the past and elsewhere? There will be a WRN lunch, no host lunch. I talked to Mary Zamor this morning. She's not exactly sure how or where that's going to take place. The afternoon, Monday afternoon, is incredibly important. And by the way, it is our plan to both be in person and live stream everything except this afternoon session. And I'm waiting to hear back from Hera, Andrew, and Rick as to whether or not we can stream it. As I wrote to them, well, let me back up a second, sorry. This session, the three of them have agreed to talk to us about each organization's internal searching and process concerning ethics. Now, this isn't the ethics committee. This isn't, this isn't the mechanisms. Although I'm sure they may talk about, redesigning the ethics codes and whatever. But this is about their internal searching, their process, where they're at, where they see themselves going, and how that will look. Rick Block and Beth Singer have agreed to moderate that conversation. And the two of them have already started working on the format of that. And so I'm just waiting to hear back from Hera, Andrew, and Rick as to whether or not they can be live streamed. Hopefully they can. What I wrote to them was that, they're all really trying to be transparent. I think that's clear from the communications we've been getting from them. But there's a limit to transparency that may be imposed upon them by their legal counsel. And so I have to have unanimous consent from the three of them. Monday evening is a panel led, Heidi Cohn's going to moderate it. Sally is definitely confirmed for it. And I've invited others from various decades of ordination to participate in the panel as well through the generations, 50 years of women in the rabbinate. Tuesday morning, we're going to start looking forward. And that is, we're going to take what we figured out on Monday and how are we going to apply it? And hopefully, again, Eva will lead us through some exercises and give us small group assignments or conversation topics so that we can begin or continue our process of what are we going to keep? How are we moving forward? What does that look like? Right before lunch, we don't know if the Israel Council General is coming yet or not. Larry's in communication with their with that office. Limudim with colleagues is going to be a little more limited than in the past. We're pretty sure Michael Gann is coming. And we are pretty sure that, I'm sorry, I skipped the CCR report. I'll come back to that. And Jonathan Stern, the former dean at HUC, is probably also coming. There may be, sorry, Jonathan Cohen. Thank you, Larry. There may be one or two others with that. CCAR report. I spoke with Hera, and we've been emailing about the CCAR report. And what I said to Hera was the CCAR is about more than the ethics process, the internal ethics process that we and they are going through. And I told Hera to take as much time as she needed, up to 45 minutes, to talk to us about not just what's going on in the conference, but given that she's been in the position now for a while, and also the things she's been learning about from the ethics process, but also all the other pieces and parts and placement and everything else, if she could talk to us also about how her vision for the CCR has changed and how it's evolved. Tuesday evening still in flux, and because the speaker we wanted to invite, we were told give them, don't approach them till 90 days, but I do have a backup plan just in case. And then Wednesday morning is our normal thing. Steve Windmuller has not been confirmed yet. That's why there are question marks there. Happy to take questions or ideas, summaries.
Thank you, Harry. It looks really great. You want to stop sharing? Yeah, great. I just do want to mention that Larry has been scouting out Palm Springs for us, and apparently all the restaurants on Palm Canyon have an outdoor option. So if people are concerned about eating indoors, there is the possibility of eating outdoors. But do people have questions for Harry or comments, complaints?
I'll also say that I have a wedding in Palm Desert the end of October, and Larry and Carol are going to meet Michelle and I there, and we're going to do some more investigating.
More scouting, great.
And the hotel's been very cooperative.
That's wonderful. Okay, thank you so much, Harry. It really looks like a great program.
Suzanne?
Yes, please.
Hi. Yeah, Harry, when you talk to the hotel, is there going to be able to be consideration for what they might be able to do to set up part or all of our group time in some of their own outdoor setting? Could we have a private corner of the, pool area, or I'm sure they've made adjustments.
We haven't had the specific conversation yet because they wanted to get through this past weekend when they were totally booked and had this huge thing going on, including using the pool and everything else. So it's on my list to get back to them this week or early next. One of the things, for example, I suggested to Mary Zamor for the WRN lunch was to have that at the pool. But we're still working on that. She's got to check with catering and all those kinds of things. But yes, it's on my list of things to see if we can see if and what we can do outside.
Great. And Larry, there's a question about how much the convention is going to cost.
Cost individually or the entire, what do you mean by?
No. I think what is the cost of the convention? I think the question from Debbie Steele is how much does it cost to attend? Is that what you meant? Debbie? Individually, yes, she says.
Okay. The room rate we'll deal with the hotel. The room rate is $140 a night. With regard to membership in PARR, it's the same as it's been since Moshe Rabbeinu, which is if you have a congregation, it is $50 membership and $50 to attend the convention. If you do not have a congregation, it is $50 to be a member, and that 50 also covers your attendance at the convention. Did it make sense? I hope so.
Thank you so much, Larry.
If there's any problems financially, please get hold of me. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, any more questions about the convention? And if not, I'm going to ask Jan O'Fell to present a brief report about the URJ.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity, Suzanne. What I really want to focus on today is two major pieces that really tie into our presentation this morning from Andy and Karen. One is, as some of you, I think a fair number of you now are aware, the URJ has created resources for congregations to create their own ethics codes. We realize there is right now, as we all are aware, there's sort of a big gaping hole in our movement with respect to ethics processes, and that has to do with congregations within a congregation. Each congregation is its own individual 501c3, but what happens when there are ethical issues within a congregation that are not can't be referred out to the CCAR, the ACC, or one of the other of our one of our professional associations. So we have created, as at least as a first step in this, we have created a template for congregations to create their own ethics code. We actually have a couple congregations that have already created their own codes. We are also beginning some coached groups, coached by URJ lay leaders who have been trained in this area for congregations that are looking to create their own codes. We're also in conversation with the CCAR and the ACC, and it was suggested to us that we also go to NADA and NATE to ask that they include on their applications a checkbox. So congregations that are applying for a professional will need to check that they themselves, the congregation, has created their own congregational ethics code. So these are various ways right now that we are trying to provide some leadership and some support out there for congregations that are that need to create ethics code. Doing the work that I do, and as I look around the screen here, we all know that there have been congregations that have not really done well by some of our colleagues, and one of the things that the URJ is really looking at is how do we respond to that. But as I'm sure all of you can imagine, that is something that takes time. We're also going over our own internal processes right now at the URJ. We've created our own internal ethics process. It's actually in some ways similar to the CCAR's, and we have similar to the CCAR and to HUC, we have an outside organization, outside law firm that is working with us to help us with our own processes. So I do want to really urge everyone though to know that, or to remember that, that this is something movement wide, that we all need to work together to create consistent and meaningful ethics processes. And that includes within our congregation. So what I'm going to do now is I'm placing in the chat a link to the tent group that holds the ethics codes, the ethics ethics code templates and other support in it. Sorry, I'm also looking at some things that came in here to me. There's been questions. I have some questions here from people asking about the other professional organizations, whether they have ethics processes. What I would say to you is yes, but meaning that clearly the CCAR's process is much more sophisticated and active, I would say, than any of our other professional organizations out there. But the ACC does have a code. My understanding is NADA now also has a code. I don't think that the ARJE has a code. They have guidelines, but there isn't a code per se. One other thing that I do just want to also bring to your attention, and this really comes from what Karen shared this morning. If you're in a situation in a congregation where you are feeling that there's just a certain amount of stress, that maybe there isn't the level of sacred partnership that you would like, and that would be best and would be healthy for your congregation and for you. I want to remind everyone of the NCRCR. Once upon a time, the NCRCR, which is North American Commission on Rabbinical Congregational Relationships, had a really, really bad name to it. The idea of the NCRCR, that it was sort of the place where congregations and rabbis went as sort of a form of hospice and how to get the rabbi out of the congregation. It also had a real sort of, and I see Steve Einstein, I think, laughing about this. It also had a certain kind of aura of secretiveness and, oh, if a rabbi goes through NCRCR, it will be a black mark on them for the entirety of their career. I want to let you all know, things change. The world changes. That is not the NCRCR today. Did I share it? I don't think I have shared it yet. I'm going to share with you also a fact sheet on the NCRCR and how we are really looking at the NCRCR today. The NCRCR today is really a place for rabbis and congregations who want to strengthen their relationship to be able to find some outside support and a roadmap to help them with some recommendations. We have had some congregations now that have been through the process recently that will certainly speak to how it's helped them, both congregations and rabbis. It's helped them tremendously as they've navigated the link doesn't work. All right, let me try that again. It's helped them tremendously navigate through what are difficult times for everyone.
Jan, can I just suggest that for that, since the link doesn't work, maybe you send me the document. I'll share it with everybody when I share
Okay.
everything else.
I
Yeah,
can
that'll make
share.
it easier.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Happy to do that.
And you have another minute.
Okay, I have another minute. So what I'm going to say in this last minute is the CCAR chair of NCRCR is Bill Kuhn, who's a retired colleague of ours in Philadelphia from Rodef Shalom. And if you are interested in finding out more about NCRCR or finding out more about the ethics templates, please feel free to reach out to me. And also with respect to NCRCR, reach out to Bill Kuhn, and I will put Bill's contact information in the chat as well. Thank you.
And that worked that time, actually. So I don't know what happened the first time, but thank you so much. Are there any quick questions for Jan before we move on? No, great. So obviously a very comprehensive presentation. Thank you, Jan. Ilana Mills and Ali Fishman are going to give us a report on the camps. And what I'm going to try to do is highlight both of you, and then who's going to go first? Ali? Ilana.
Go first. So I'm Ilana. I'm Director of Camp Kalsman. I'll only talk for a few minutes. A quick report is we had an amazing summer this past summer. We saw over 500 campers. The biggest celebration was that we had 0 COVID in camp, but I think there was a ton of very positive, very great, very refreshing energy that happened this summer, and campers and parents alike loved that their campers were reconnected to the kind of in-person Jewish community that we create. I'd say the biggest thing that happened this summer was that I became camp director. So that was a big deal. It had been David Berkman for the last 15 years, and that is a big transition that's still happening.
Hey, mazel tov.
Thanks. But besides that, I would say, and we are about to launch our rates and dates and our numbers in the next few weeks, and are continuing to think about kind of creative outside of the box and also physically outside programming that we can do to help reach more families. Ali, anything you want to talk about?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And we're so lucky to have Ilana on our West Coast team now also. So that's a small but big development that we have now. Kalsman and Camp Newman and 6 Points West, which is what we were calling 6 Points SciTech, all 3 of our camps all together in a hub under the direction of Ari Vered, who's been at PARR before and is wonderful. I'll just echo our success in 21. We had an amazing staff who stayed on site for almost the entirety of the summer. Oh, yeah, I'm Ali. I'm the camp director at Camp Newman, and it was an amazing summer. We had over 700 campers at Newman, which was wonderful, and over 30 of them were there for a small taste of camp, which was amazing as well. 1st through 4th graders came just for a weekend. It was really sweet, and our biggest news was we were back on site at Porter Creek in Santa Rosa, which, after being gone for 3 summers and the fire and everything, this was a very big deal for us. And very, very exciting. We can't wait for anyone who's excited to come and see it. We're looking at what we can do in the next year and a half to plan some faculty retreats up at Newman so people can come in and be there and take a look and see what it's like. We're also going to launch registration in November. We'll be putting out those dates very shortly, and we are ready to start booking promotional events, both in person and virtually. We're going to put some dates out there also for anyone who might be local for some open houses. So if you've been itching to come and see camp, since we've done part of our rebuild, we'd love to have you. There's going to be 2 in December and 2 in January. I'll put those dates out when I have them ready for everybody. And the URJ is on some travel restrictions due to COVID up until January, but we have people locally almost everywhere that we have synagogues. So if you do want an in-person promotional event, we're happy to provide that if we can find the right person to come be with you, the right really good person to come be with you for an hour, a couple hours, whatever it is. And we will email you very soon someone from our team and someone from 6 Points West to put that time together if you're in our catchment. And then let's see what else I have here. We are in the middle of more construction at camp. We have 8 brand new cabins. We call them our lodges. They're pretty fancy and fun. We have 8 of those being constructed right now, actually. That gives us an extra 128 bed spaces at camp for next summer, which is wonderful and very exciting. We broke ground on August 30th for those, and they're doing really, really beautiful progress right now. We're raising money right now for the next phase of construction, which will be a whole score of brand new adult housing on camp. So that leads me to share that our retreat center business has opened again. Some people on this call, their synagogues have already spoken to us about coming and running a retreat back at camp. We're still getting into the groove of everything, but we do have so much outdoor space at camp, and it's very amenable to COVID conditions in some ways, because we have a beautiful outdoor porch for dining and just a beautiful outdoor space in general. We've bought some tents and some other things, like many of you have at your synagogues, to make it easier to help people feel really comfortable coming to camp. The retreat center is going really great, and if you're interested in getting connected, I'll put my email in the chat, as well as our retreat center director, Marty, so that if you want to reach out to her, that you can, and we'd love to have you with us. You might have seen a really great article also about Camp Newman entering into a partnership with Wilderness Torah. We're building this Center for Eco-Judaism at Porter Creek. They have been looking for a site. We have been looking for someone to help us build up our kibbutz that we've had there before, and we got a grant to talk about this wonderful partnership with them that has begun now. So that is going really beautifully as well, and we'll hopefully bring in a lot of those pieces of eco-Judaism, sustainability, etc. And then that's it for all of our big things, which is plenty for right now. We're excited for a really great 22 season. We assume that COVID is going to still be something for us, but we're looking at what that's going to be like. And just a small piece of good and welfare that I probably will not be able to join in January. I am due to have a baby in just about 5 weeks, so which is very exciting.
B'sha'ah tova.
Thank you, and I will miss seeing all of you in person, but we'll have at least one representative from our 3 camps there to represent and be there for our meeting that's already on the books, and to keep building those relationships with everybody as we move forward to get as many campers to all 3 of our camps in our region. So thank you so much for having us, and look at that, we did great on timing today.
Yeah, you did. And Yasher Koach on all the great work that you're doing, and having so many campers and keeping them safe. I mean, you're really a model for the whole country, really.
It was our medical liaison, she keeps sending me all of these articles about camps that didn't do as good as our URJ camps did. So
Yay.
We're very grateful to the URJ for all the support and getting us through the summer, and all of our faculty and everyone has just been so helpful and supportive. So thank you.
Wonderful. Does anybody have a question? Harry, you have a question?
Yeah, Allie, Alana, could you let me know if someone's going to do a camp program at PARR?
Yes, I'm going to check in with Ari and Rachel Slayton, both of whom have been before, and Jordana. And I think someone will come from our West Coast team, and I'll let you know who's planning on it soon.
Yeah, if someone can let me know in the next couple of days so we can get the thing out. Thanks.
No problem. That sounds awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions for either Ilana or Allie? Okay, Devora Weisberg is going to give us a report on HUC.
Okay, let me start with our pandemic update. All of our campuses are open. If you're coming to campus at any point, you should know that you have to bring proof of vaccination and you have to wear your mask while you're in the building. We're only permitting eating in private offices at the moment. We hope that it will stay warm and dry as long as possible. We're also offering accommodations for faculty and staff and students who can't come to campus or are concerned they have unvaccinated children, they're immunocompromised. So we do have, some of our classes are hybrid, some of our classes are Zoom only if they're cross campus. And to the best of my knowledge to date, we have not had any reported exposures to COVID on campuses, and we have not had to close down. We are working very hard on updating our technology. Those of you who went to HUC recently know that we're not always as tech savvy as we need to be. A lot of the hardware that we ordered is, of course, delayed in a supply chain off the probably, at the port of Long Beach. But things are manageable. Our online classes are working. We're having tefillah outside. We're having some classes outside. So that's where we are. Everyone is very glad to be back, even in masks. For those of you who haven't seen it yet on the CCAR website, the Rabbinic Placement Commission has decided that moving forward, HUC students are going to go through the same placement process as rabbis in the field. Yes, Rick, I like it too. Instead of having a special, time-bound, very structured process, the person who had to schedule 200 interviews in 3 days is very happy. We think this will really help our students compete in the field for assistantships, for solo pulpits, and it will also allow them to have a much calmer search. They won't be doing it all in a very short period of time. So we're very excited. And to help the students prepare for placement, we're doing a series of national workshops where all of the fifth-year students have access to planning for resume preparation, personal statements, negotiating skills, online presence, all of this. So we're very excited about also the opportunity to have all students on all 3 campuses preparing for placement together, as opposed to going through placement together, which they won't have to do. Year in Israel is started. We have 25 first-year rabbinical students, plus however many cantorial and education students. Everybody got to Israel. Everybody got through quarantine before the high holidays. We're now doing national orientation for rabbinical schools. So in May, before the students went to Israel, we had an online national orientation so they could meet all the program directors and hear about the entire 5-year experience and not just have the Jerusalem orientation. We have begun our admission season. We have our first open house in 2 weeks. It's going to be virtual, so prospective students can take classes or sit in classes on multiple campuses, go to tefillah on multiple campuses, meet with the national director. I'm already starting to get requests for appointments with prospects. If you know people who are interested in rabbinical school, please encourage them to reach out to the National Office of Recruitment and Admissions, to come to an open house, to be in touch with me. We can do on-campus visits. We're not doing on-campus large visits like open houses, but if somebody wants to come visit campus, we can arrange it. Our first round of interviews will be in December, January, and our second round will be in March. Not much to report on our ethics process because I haven't heard much about it lately, but we did, I believe that the law firm that we engaged has finished its interviewing and is presumably preparing the report for the board. I'll answer that question in a minute, Lisa. And we're moving forward. Well, we're inching forward on strategic planning, and I'm working at the same time to try to make sure that more of the rabbinical school curriculum is shared across the campuses and that we're all talking to each other and that we are presenting a picture of a single rabbinical school that just happens to have multiple sites. So that's my report. And Lisa, the answer to your question is that because this is a transition year and because the students and the congregations didn't find out about this till July, which is when we decided, we're telling students that they can't begin the CCR placement process until December 1st. They don't have to have completed the thesis, but they have to have demonstrated that it is progressing such that we feel confident it will be finished by March 1st. And so yes, they can begin then. And yes, and they will be looking for jobs potentially while going to class and writing their theses. But overall, we actually think that this mirrors real life, that when any one of you goes into placement, you are at the same time, also doing your previous job, hopefully. You also have, a family. In other words, all of us who have been through a second job search or who never went through the placement process, know that in real life, you look for a new job while working at your old job, and we think this is going to be fine. So yeah. And for non-congregations, for non-congregational organizations hoping to look at an H2C student, this is phenomenal because the students aren't locked into that calendar. So they can take a job anytime, and they can look at CCAR congregations and Hillel at the same time, and so to speak, leave the CCAR process even in the middle of it. Right? In other words, they're not trapped, Evan, in that once you start interviewing with CCAR congregations, you may not accept a Hillel position until March 3rd. So it's essentially the same experience that any one of us would have if we are looking for a job. You can look at as many different kinds of jobs as you want, and you're working on your schedule and your potential employer's schedule, and not on an artificial schedule made up by the Hebrew Union College and the CCAR. So that's what else?
Can you hear me, Devorah?
Yes.
Oh, can you share with the entire group, as you shared with me the other day, how many students you expect to have at PARR at the convention this year?
I expect there are 7 students being ordained on the LA campus. This is a small class. I hope to have at least 5 of them at PARR, because one of them is getting married in a foreign country and another one is doing something else. But yes, that would be my hope. How are pandemic protocols affecting students with travel pulpits? Well, I am really happy to say they adapted really well, and the URJ was incredibly helpful with resources, as was the college. And I have not had any students who have not been able to come to an arrangement with their congregation about remote versus travel versus hybrid that wasn't comfortable for the student. A lot of the congregations, particularly in California, are being very careful, but even our congregations in places with higher COVID rates and lower vaccination rates and have been incredibly supportive of the students, and have been able to see that the students' concern about their own safety is also the concern about the safety of the congregants. So it has been really, really amazing. I feel really like we've created really strong relationships with our congregations, and we've been able to work together. So thank you for offering help, but so far, Baruch Hashem, so good. Is there a concern about a student getting position in February and blowing off the rest of their 5th-year obligations? No, I have no concern whatsoever, because we've told the students that if they don't finish their work, we're not going to ordain them, and that the people who have offered them jobs won't want to hire them if they are not ordained. And we also told the congregations that too. Also, by the way, I mean, even in March, when we had this other system, yes, the thesis was done, but the students still were taking classes in March and April. No, if you don't turn your library books back in, you will not be ordained at the Hebrew Union College. And lest you think that I don't mean it, I regret to say that within the last few years, we had a student who did not finish their thesis, and that student never became a rabbi. So I know that I fool you all the time into thinking that I'm a kind, compassionate, nice human being, but my former students who are sitting, on this screen know that I can be a real pain in the ass too.
Well, Devorah, thank you very much for that great report. And we're hoping that no student is going to blow off their 5th-year obligations, because that does not bode well for them as a rabbi, especially as we're discussing ethics violations here today, right? Okay. Rick Steinberg has double duty, treasurer's report as well as the CCAR report. So Rick, take her away.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I just want to give Devorah a shout out. As a member of the Placement Commission, she really, her brilliance brought this all together, and is, I think, going to be the model for the foreseeable future, and a good thing for our rabbinate. So thank you, Devorah, so much. On behalf of our CEO, Hera Person. I have been asked to give the CCR report as a member of the board of the CCR. So Hera's had her hands full over the last couple of years since she took the reins. And I really like, I forget who said it, maybe it was Harry who said it, that the CCR is doing an incredible job on the ethics stuff. But there's a lot more to the CCR than just ethics. So this report includes all of that. First item is there's a new continuing rabbinic education booklet coming out in the next month or so. So please look for that. And you know, those classes taught by our colleagues tend to be really insightful, as we saw this morning between 10 and 11 with our two colleagues, which I thought was really insightful. There's some special Cheshvan programming happening this month, and that will be in, I think, next week's eBlast. So check that out. The CCR is in the process of creating a wellness program, and that's coming to fruition. You might have heard that Cindy Enger has left the position of Director of Placement, and that has caused a great opportunity to rethink placement. I mean, placement is anything but placement. The director doesn't say, okay, like Jacob Rader or Marcus did, you're good for this job and you're gonna go over here in San Francisco, you're gonna go to LA and you're gonna go to New York. It doesn't really work that way. And so in the interim, as they're developing what that department might look like, we call it Department of Rabbinic Career Services. It's been bifurcated. One position is to deal with rabbis who are going into this process. And then the other is dealing with the congregations as they're going into this process. And so that department hasn't grown in the last 50 years. It's had one director and one assistant. And so over the last many months, there's been an opportunity to really think this department. And they're not making any final decisions. They really want to think about the next couple of decades about the rabbinate, and that takes some time to consider. Ethics, it was mentioned already, but I'll just briefly summarize. The investigation part is over, and what that really means is the interview part of the process is over, and the Alka Law, this law firm that specializes in this, is really putting together everything they've learned and going to assess it. And they heard from hundreds of people, victims of abuse, people who had ethical violations, people who were on track teams, all sorts of different perspectives to think about. And so the ethics task force, which I don't know if Nikki's still on screen here, is really tasked with taking much of the information from Alka Law and then putting it into what our future should be vis-a-vis the ethics code. You heard Andy say many times this morning, you know, they're stuck with these four corners of the ethics code that was written in the 1990s that doesn't apply to the 2020s so well. So I would anticipate major, significant updated changes coming in the next year. But to Hera's credit, she is such a thoughtful leader and she doesn't want to rush anything. And I think there will probably also be a reconciliation for the CCAR's, I don't know how to describe it, lack of response in past years, not under her administration, but you know, many years before that will be tshuva, if you will, for the CCAR. I would anticipate that as well. She wanted me to mention that dues are due. If anyone hasn't paid, CCR would greatly appreciate it. Also, if you heard from somebody on the CCR board asking for you to make a donation to the CCR, if you would fulfill that as well. Convention is happening in person in San Diego as of today. And so we're all West Coasters by and large. So love to see everybody there. And two more things. The press has some new books. One is Because My Soul Longs for You, Integrating Theology into Our Lives, which is a collection of essays edited by Eddie Goldberg and Elaine Zecker, is out. And then the Social Justice Commentary, which promises to be fantastic, by Barry Block, will be out in November. And the last thing Hera wanted me to say is she's grateful to everyone for their support in all the ways that we provided. And of course, PARR is the superstar of regions. If we still have regions, I don't know. But she's just appreciative of all that PARR does for the CCR and its mission. Any questions, comments about CCR stuff? All right, my treasurer's report is the following. In our bank account, we have $46,456 as of yesterday, unless Larry spent it overnight. And so that is the report.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you very much. Any questions about the Treasury report? Since we do have a little bit of time, let's do some good and welfare. Does anybody want to share something good or welfare-ish?
I'll start. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Heidi.
Hi.
Can you speak? Can you turn up your volume a little bit? You sound very faint.
Sorry. For some reason, that my microphone on my computer is off. Can you hear that better?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. You know what? I'll get my headsets. Somebody else go ahead of me.
Anybody else have something they want to share? Okay,
Can you hear
Devorah.
me?
So unlike Allie, I'm not going to have to miss convention because of a baby, but by the time we get to convention, I will be able to show everyone pictures of my first grandchild.
Oh my goodness, how exciting. B'sha'a tova to your son and daughter-in-law. Okay, Larry, did you want to say something? Is that, oh, you're ready, Heidi?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Can I ask a question of Rick? And can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Rick, dear friend, the whole issue I have found of not having a director of placement, or simply there are 4 people that have carved up the director of placement's portfolio. And my question to you is basically in the realm of homework. Can you find out if anyone of those 4 will be present at the PARR convention with respect to placement? Rabbi Weinberg, what's his first name? Michael?
Michael.
Michael. I was told by Hera that Michael is the person that is in charge of that aspect, but that he is interim and part-time and doesn't know whether, she doesn't know whether he will be coming out to PARR. Other people have said to me, frankly, the day and age of people coming to conventions and giving reports is history. That with Zoom and everything else, who needs that? And I don't know how to answer that, but I do know that there may be people, don't ask me how many, who really want to meet with the, in quotes, acting director of placement at PARR.
It's a great question. You know, when Alan was the placement director, you'd never see him because he'd be up in his room having private meetings with every rabbi who was interested in placement, of course. I will find out the answer to that, and It's a very fair question, and I will get an answer to you, Mr. Parzar.
Thanks, Rick. Okay, Heidi.
Just really quickly, just got back from Washington, D.C., celebrating Davi's commencement. So even though she graduated in May, GW did a commencement on the mall, which was really exciting. Elizabeth Warren, oh my gosh, an amazing speaker. Going to try to get her for convention next year. Not really. But,
I can't believe your daughter has graduated from college already. My God.
I know. And Yoni was crowned homecoming king the same weekend. So
exciting. Mazel tov. That's great. Anyone else want to share something? Okay, well, it looks like we're all perfectly happy with everything that's happened so far. And
can I deal with time and place?
Oh yeah. I forgot. Yeah, that was on the agenda. Yeah, sorry.
Our contract with the Palm Springs Hilton Hotel ends with this convention. And the question is, they're going to make a proposal in the next couple of weeks. In talking to the person in charge, she said to me, next year's convention, the one in 2023, not the upcoming one, but a year away, would start on January 1st, Sunday, January 1st. However, she has booked both January 1st and January 8th. And so I'm putting on, I don't know, for want of a better term, putting on the table for those of you who are still with us, and Suzanne, you know how many are right now, as to what your pleasure is on a straw vote or whatever. The convention's chair will be Heidi, but I guess we have some input. So the question is January 1 or January 8th, 2023, and I'll shut up. Thank
Heidi
you.
says her vote is for January 8th, so just FYI.
It is, and I mean, because one of the things that I know that communities will do is on, for New Year's Eve, especially when it falls on a Saturday, they might be having a celebration in their community, and so to push it then to January 8th, so it's not a huge mad rush.
And Lisa and Evan both vote for January 8th.
I would agree with January 8th, especially if we're trying to make it appealing for younger colleagues to come who may have children. And so if it's January 1st is Sunday, that's going to be the end of winter break for, I'm going to assume, I mean, that may be the case every year, that it's the end of, school break. And so we have people who aren't able to come because they've got kids, but the 8th would definitely, avoid that scenario.
Okay, Devora says she doesn't want to drive on January 1st amid the hungover drivers. That's a very good point. And Steve Einstein says, I've never liked it when PARR began on January 1st. I vote for January 8th. So it sounds like there's pretty much of a consensus for January 8th, unless anybody is very, very committed to January 1st. Anybody? Sounds like the 8th it is, at least for the people who are on this call. And since you all stayed till the very bitter end, you get to vote. And the people who didn't stay don't. Very democratic.
Can I ask a question of Larry? Besides,
Sure. Yes.
Besides deciding the date for 2023,
yes.
Don't you normally do some kind of deal with them that we get a great rate if you commit to, 5 years out or 3 years out? And is that part of your conversation with the Hilton at this point?
Yes and yes. The lady will be bringing in a proposal of 3 years, but the only thing that stood out to her was this coming year because of January 1/January 8th. And we have a wonderful relationship. For those on this call, we will have been there basically 33 years in a row. That's a world's record for any organization, and they truly appreciate it, et cetera, et cetera. If you're done with that, I think we need to make an announcement here for your information, everybody in the room, if you will. And that is, I received this morning by email the announcement that NAOR will be canceling their convention, their upcoming convention in Florida. It was going to begin, frankly, the day after PARR ends, but nonetheless, I wanted you to have that piece of information.
And of course, Florida is a different situation from California as far as COVID. So, yeah, well, thanks, Larry.
And I'm happy to describe, although some have already described, the hotel and the city of Palm Springs have done everything they can to bring back the crowds and so on. And please, if you find that you have any issues that you want me to deal with with regard to the hotel, let me know. For example, our opening night banquet for years has been in the Horizon Ballroom, which can seat 350 people or so. So what we're planning on doing is having not only the opening banquet, but the plenary sessions in that room to create as much space as possible, with regard to all the health issues that are on everybody's mind. But they will, within reason, they will do everything they can to respond to our questions.
Great. Well, thank you for everything you've done to maintain that relationship over the years, Larry. And I'm sure it's because of you that we have such a good deal.
And a happy belated birthday, Larry.
Oh, yes.
Thank
Yom
you.
Huledet Sameach.
Thank you.
Skip around the room, skip around the room. Oh, okay, never mind.
Okay, anything further from anybody? Well, thanks, everybody. So grateful for you to stick it out to the very, very end. And so I will say goodbye. See you soon.
Well done, Suzanne.
So long. Nicely done, everybody.
Thank you.
That's cool.
Take care.
Everybody, see you later. Have a great day. Happy Cheshvan.
Yeah.
Thank God. Get some work done.